105 Esoteric Traditions of the World, Book 1 of 7 Guardians of the First Flame. Chapter 1, Sky Gazers and Spirit Keepers, the Living Cosmos of Bonn, Tibet. 1. Mythic Prelude, before the Dharma came. Before sutra and stupa, before the coming of monks in saffron robes and the thunder of translated scriptures from the south, there was wind. And the Bonpa knew its name. In the high, dry plateau of Zhang Zhung, land of sapphire skies and red ochre cliffs, spirit was never a theory. It breathed through stone, it moved in water, it roared from mountaintops and shimmered in firelight. There, before Tibet became Tibet, the people lived not in exile from the sacred, but within it. They did not study cosmology. They were inside it. The world itself was the scripture. A raven's cry might deliver instruction. The curve of a cloud might disclose an omen. A certain arrangement of bones, ashes, herbs, and breath could align the human soul with the rhythm of stars. They did not believe in gods as one believes in rumors or doctrines. They related to them, like one relates to fire, with awe, familiarity, and caution. Every mountain had a heart. Every stream had a voice. Every illness had a spiritual cause, and, often, a spiritual cure. It was into this already lit world that Bonpa Shenrab Miwoche descended. Not born of flesh, not bound by time, Bonpa Shenrab came from a realm of pure luminosity, the realm of Sidpa Yesang, where light and wisdom are one. From the throne of Sipe Gyalmo, the queen of the universe, he stepped into time not to found a religion, but to remind beings of a forgotten arrangement. He arrived not to convert, but to realign. Tall, radiant, wearing the braided hair and high boots of a mountain nomad, he spoke not in abstract truths, but in actions, in symbols, in sacred performance. His words were ritual, his teachings, choreography. He taught not through catechism, but through alignment, how to walk the earth without wounding it, how to speak to the sky without arrogance, how to honor the spirits of water, wind, fire, and stone without turning them into idols. He brought with him 360 volumes of subtle knowledge, texts that would later be burned, buried, and rewritten under foreign names. But more than text, he brought presence. Bonpa Shenrab was not the founder of Bonn in the way later histories would try to pin down. He was its embodied transmission, the living interface between the unformed and the formed, between source and manifestation. And so, the people listened. They relearned the lost rites. They offered smoke to the spirits of land and sky. They walked again in the ancient way, not with dogma, but with relation. This was the world before the Dharma came. Not a void waiting to be filled, not a barbarian plain yearning for salvation, but a world already soaked in spirit, already fluent in the language of the invisible. Bonn was never pre-religious. It was never a primitive precursor to something higher. Bonn was, and remains, extra-scriptural, a matrix of sacred participation rather than fixed belief. It does not ask what you believe. It asks how you walk, how you speak, how you offer, how you listen. In Bonn, ritual is not symbolic representation, it is contact. The drumbeat does not suggest the movement of the spirits, it summons them. The offering smoke does not represent a prayer, it is the prayer, rising in visible form. What Bonpa Shenrab offered was not salvation from suffering, but a return to harmony with what is. Not escape from samsara, but remembrance of sacred embeddedness. To be Bonpa was to be in rhythm with the wind, the soil, the ancestors, the luminous deities above and the feral spirits below. To live in the sacred was not a concept. It was how you walked. And then came Buddhism, great, golden, vast, with texts, philosophies, monastic orders, and imperial patronage. And in its shadow, Bonn was misnamed, misread, and often erased. But Bonn never needed canonization. It needed only continuity. As long as the mountain is still honored, as long as the wind is still greeted, Bon breathes. Even now, in quiet valleys and windswept plateaus, there are those who remember, who gaze at the sky not as an absence, but as a presence, who speak to the mountain, and sometimes, when the rhythm is right, find that the mountain speaks back. 2. Cosmology of Bon, a world inhabited, not constructed. To live in a Bon world is to live in a world that looks back. The sky does not merely stretch overhead, it watches. The mountain is not just rock and time, it is a presence. The wind does not simply pass through your hair, it carries memory. You are not living on the earth. You are living within it, braided into a field of relations both seen and unseen. This is the Bon cosmos, not a system to be constructed, but a reality to be entered, not a dream to be escaped, but a relationship to be repaired. The three realms, Shrid, Pa-I, Gsum. The world, in Bon understanding, is composed of three interwoven realms. They are not spatial layers stacked like floors in a house, but dimensions of existence, interpenetrating one another like breath, wind, and light. The physical realm, Gaius Pa. The world of form, stone, body, landscape. This is the realm we call real, but it is only one strand of reality. The intermediate realm, Bar Du. A subtle domain of energy, emotion, dream, and spirit. This is where ancestral presence lingers, where ritual efficacy unfolds, where spirits of place dwell. The ultimate realm, Don Dam, the realm of pure awareness, luminous origin, and divine presence, not separate from the other two, but the source from which they arise and into which they dissolve. To heal, to align, to live in truth, you must be in right relation with all three. You must not only eat food and breathe air, you must honor the spirit of the food, the direction of the wind, the presence of awareness that saturates all things. This is not mysticism. It is realism of the deepest kind. Spirits of place, Yul La, Tsen, and Lu. Where Western science sees inert matter, Bon sees inhabited presence. Every mountain has its Yul La, a mountain god or local deity. To build, to climb, or even to point at a mountain without proper ritual can bring illness, misfortune, or madness. Not because the mountain is vengeful, but because its dignity was breached. The high passes and sky ridges belong to Tsen, fiery red beings, often wrathful, who dislike loud noise, iron, and disrespect. Warriors may honor them, but peasants fear to cross their paths without offerings. The waters, rivers, lakes, springs belong to Lu, serpent spirits, keepers of vitality and wealth. Disrupting a Lu's home may result in strange skin diseases, paralysis, or sterility. To prevent such affliction, the Bon practitioner performs appeasement rituals with milk, barley, and song. These are not metaphors. They are cosmological facts, not because they conform to material evidence, but because they respond. In Bon, something is real when it listens back. Deities and enlightened beings. Above and within the spirits of place move the luminous deities, beings of primordial awareness and cosmic intention. They are not distant sky gods. They are intimately present, woven into the structure of the soul. Kuntu Zangpo, all good, the primordial presence, awareness without center, the original mirror in which all phenomena appear. Saip Gyalmo, queen of the universe, six-armed, multicolored, fierce and protective. She rides a mule through the cosmos, bearing flames, medicine, and wrathful compassion. She is not a goddess of gentleness, but of fierce balance. She burns through illusion, not to punish, but to restore sacred order. Shenla Okar, wisdom light, radiant and white, his name means white light god. He embodies peaceful compassion, luminous intelligence, and is often seen as a Bon counterpart to the Buddhist Avalokiteshvara or Amitabha. But he is older than those names. He teaches not escape from the world, but its illumination. To align with these deities is not to worship them in abstraction, but to invite them into the body, the ritual space, the breath. The 5 elements: Wang, earth, water, fire, air, space. The world is composed not of dead substance, but of living presences. The Bon 5 elements, called Wang, meaning power or dominion, are not to be used, but harmonized with. To use them improperly is to fracture one's life. To harmonize with them is to flow within the breath of the cosmos. Earth, stability, memory, ancestry. Its excess hardens, its absence destabilizes. Earth must be rooted, not dominated. Water, emotion, flexibility, flow. Too much leads to confusion or passivity. Too little, dryness, rigidity, blocked feeling. Fire, vision, vitality, transformation. When balanced, it sharpens clarity and will. When disturbed, it becomes anger or delusion. Air/wind, movement, voice, spirit. It is the breath that animates. Unbalanced wind leads to erratic thought, anxiety, or fragmentation. Space, openness, potential. The womb of all forms. Space is not emptiness. It is the sacred room in which all else moves. Too much space dissolves structure. Too little suffocates. Bon practice is about listening to these elements, feeding them, making offerings to them, and restoring their dance within the body and the world. To heal someone is to listen for which element is out of rhythm, and to ask the spirits why. Karmic winds and the architecture of the self. In Bon, the self is not a fixed entity, but a confluence of karmic winds and luminous essence. These winds, called relung, though different from Tibetan Buddhist usage, are spiritual forces shaped by past actions and ancestral imprints. They circulate within the body as vitality, thought, emotion, and fate. They also extend beyond the body, affecting one's home, family, and destiny. When we violate the laws of relation, insulting a land spirit, breaking a promise to an ancestor, ignoring the signs of the dream world, the winds become twisted. Disease arises, fortune dries up, accidents multiply. Healing, then, is not chemical. It is ritual correction of the winds, reconnection with forgotten presences, and realignment with cosmic order. This is not superstition. It is an ontological reality. The soul is not a sealed chamber. It is a web. Against illusion, Bon versus Buddhist and Western cosmologies. Whereas Buddhist philosophy often teaches that the world is Maya, illusion, impermanent, a dream from which we must awaken, Bon teaches something else. The world is not illusion. It is a field of sacred relations. You do not wake from the world. You wake within it. You do not transcend nature. You harmonize with it. The goal is not escape, but resonance. And where Western materialism sees the world as composed of dumb matter governed by random laws and blind force, Bon sees awareness in all things. Fire has intent. Wind has character. Mountains remember. Bon does not reject science. It simply begins from a different premise. The cosmos is alive. Therefore, to act upon it without reverence is to invite disorder. Closing thought. You are not alone in the world. To live as a Bonpa is not to believe in a system. It is to walk through a world that watches, to speak to the wind before building a home, to leave an offering at the mountain pass, to apologize to a tree before cutting it, to listen when a dream repeats itself. Because in this cosmology, everything matters, and nothing, no river, no word, no illness, is ever just what it seems. You are not alone. Not ever. 3. The Bon diagnosis of the human condition. In the Bon understanding, to be human is to be permeable. The soul is not a fortress. It is a field. And that field, though luminous by nature, is vulnerable to rupture, disturbance, and theft. From the moment of birth, a person is composed not only of flesh and thought, but of Lao, a soul spark, the vital thread of animating essence that connects a person to their destiny, their ancestors, and the spirit of the land on which they walk. This LA is not fixed. It can be strengthened, fractured, taken, or lost. Shock, grief, trauma, even long neglect of sacred practice can cause the LA to withdraw. This is called lalung, soul loss. The result is a hollowing, fatigue that cannot be explained, sadness that cannot be reasoned with, a sense of fading from one's own life. The person still speaks, still eats, still breathes. But some part of them has gone missing. Others may experience spirit intrusion, when entities from the unseen realm cross thresholds unguarded and take up residence in the psychic space of the host. These intrusions do not always announce themselves with horror or spectacle. Sometimes they speak in chronic illness, in recurring nightmares, in a voice just beneath the surface, urging despair, division, or self-harm. Modern psychology may label these as depression, anxiety, or dissociative episodes. Bon sees deeper. These are not abstract dysfunctions. They are consequences of relational failure, a forgetting of the sacred structure of the world. When a person fails to honor the spirits of place, when they violate ancestral taboos, when they live cut off from the elemental forces that once sustained their people, the fabric of the self begins to fray. Karma, in this system, is not a cosmic punisher, but a relational echo. When one's relationship with the world becomes disharmonious, that dissonance ripples. Misfortune follows. Accidents, loss, illness, estrangement. These are not punishments. They are signs that the thread has loosened. To live well in Bon is not merely to be moral. It is to be in alignment with spirit, with land, with lineage, with wind. This is why the Bon healer does not work like a doctor, isolating symptoms to suppress them. The true Bonpa healer is a ritual architect, someone who sees the broken lines of relation and reweaves them. If the sickness arises from a loose spirit angered by polluted water, the healer performs offerings, songs, and smoke rituals to apologize, appease, and reharmonize. If the person's LA has fled due to shock, the healer journeys, through dream, trance, or sacred chant, to retrieve it. If the spirit of a dead relative is clinging too closely, blurring the boundary between living and dead, the healer performs droll, a release ritual, to guide that presence to its rightful realm. To heal the person, you must heal their field, the energetic, ancestral, elemental environment in which they exist. You do not heal the body. You heal the field. The body follows. Bon is not a medicine of isolation. It is a medicine of relation. The healer is not a mechanic of the flesh. She is a priest of harmony, restoring the architecture of the world within and around the human being. This is why Bon rituals can seem elaborate, even excessive, to modern eyes. But they are precise acts of repair, speaking not only to the body, but to the mountain, to the fire, to the spirit of the stream that witnessed the trauma, to the grandmother's spirit who still lingers near the threshold. To forget the sacred structure of the world is to become vulnerable to all forces, internal and external, that feed on fragmentation. To remember is to begin returning. To be healed is not only to feel better, but to be placed back into right relation, so that the winds quiet, the ancestors nod, and the spirits of place cease their protest. In Bon, healing is not a fix. It is a homecoming. A. Foundational practices. Bon is not a faith of ideas. It is a tradition of technologies, ritual, breath, vision, and sound, each designed to restore harmony between human life and the sacred web of existence. These practices are not philosophical statements. They are acts of realignment, mechanisms for tuning the subtle body to the deeper structure of the world. Foundational practices are where this tuning begins, not in abstraction, but in the gesture, the offering, the dream, the breath that recalls the forgotten sacred. Surkyem and smoke offerings, appeasing the spirits, renewing the field. At the heart of Bon's everyday ritual, life are offerings, not just prayers, but substances transformed into relation. These include surkyem, a libation of black tea or barley alcohol, and various forms of incense and smoke made from sacred plants and resins. Offerings are made to three categories of spirit beings whose moods shape the balance of the world. Yul-Laha, mountain gods, guardians of place. Lu, serpent spirits of water, vitality, and wealth. Tsen, sky beings, powerful and quick to anger. Each has its own temperament. Lu dislikes disturbance. Tsen detests arrogance. Yul-La demands reverence. The surkyem ritual involves pouring tea or alcohol into a cup, then allowing it to overflow into a lower bowl, symbolizing an abundance freely given to the spirits. This is accompanied by invocation chants, hand mudras, and visualizations. The act is simple, but its purpose is profound. To maintain the contract between human and spirit, to acknowledge the unseen intelligences whose satisfaction or displeasure shapes fortune and health. Smoke offerings do more than scent the air. The rising plumes are vehicles of prayer, pathways of access, and meals for spirits who do not eat as we do. Made from juniper, pine, mugwort, and other sacred herbs, the smoke carries gratitude, apology, or petition into the subtle realms. It calms the wind spirits. It signals respect to the earth below. To offer is to say, I remember you. And when the spirits feel remembered, they withdraw their claws. Laguk, the retrieval of the soul, restoring the lost spark. When a person suffers a shock, an accident, a betrayal, a sudden grief, something essential may flee. This is the law, the soul essence, the spark that binds person to purpose, spirit to body. La loss, la lung, manifests in many ways. Fatigue that sleep cannot fix, confusion that resists explanation, chronic illness with no clear cause, or a dull sense of having drifted out of one's own life. In extreme cases, it can open the door to intrusive spirits. Laguk, or soul retrieval, is the remedy. It is not metaphor. It is medicine. The ritual begins with the preparation of sacred space, usually outdoors or in a liminal threshold, such as the edge of a forest, near flowing water, or before a mountain shrine. The healer lights incense, beats a drum in a steady, pulsing rhythm, and begins to chant, entering a liminal state. This is not performance. It is traversal. The practitioner journeys, sometimes guided by dreams, to seek the fragments of soul that have wandered or been taken. There may be invocation of protectors. There may be symbolic negotiations with beings that guard the lost LA. A garment of the patient may be used as a vessel, a thread to call the soul back into form. When the Elah returns, the patient often feels it subtly, like warmth entering the limbs, a sudden clarity, or even the urge to weep without knowing why. Not all wounds bleed. Some go silent. Laguk is how we speak the soul back into the body. Dream interpretation and incubation. The diagnostic power of the night. In Bon, the dream is a diagnostic tool. It is not dismissed as subconscious detritus. It is respected as communication from spirits, ancestors, and the deeper self. Dreams may forewarn illness, indicate spiritual pollution, or offer guidance from deities. The images are rarely random. They are symbolic languages with established patterns passed down through lineage memory. Common motifs include black water, hidden danger, unresolved karmic debt. Bird entering the house, message from a protector spirit. Teeth falling out, ancestral unrest or upcoming loss. Being naked in public. Vulnerability to intrusion or the need for ritual cleansing. Walking a narrow path above the void. Transition, the bardo. Initiation into new fate. A Bon practitioner trained in Milam, dream work, may ask the patient to recount dreams from the nights before illness began. The practitioner listens not just for symbols, but for patterns, emotional tones, and spatial environments, each a clue pointing to the nature of the imbalance. But Bon dream work is not just interpretive, it is also incubatory. That is, dreams can be sought through ritual. A patient may be asked to sleep in a specific place, wear certain clothing, or recite protective mantras before bed. A small torma, ritual food effigy, may be offered to a deity to invite a vision. The dream becomes a space where healing begins even before the body wakes. Dreams, in Bon, are the night speech of the world. They are where deities give warnings, where lost souls cry out, where mountains whisper their approval or dismay. To ignore dreams is to ignore the bridge between seen and unseen. To heed them is to listen for the rhythm of return. B. Intermediate practices. Foundational practices restore connection between the individual and the spirits, between soul and world. But Bon also offers practices for deepening awareness, refining presence, and anchoring consciousness in the unseen dimensions. These intermediate techniques prepare the practitioner not merely to appease, but to perceive. Sky gazing, Jiné. Training in presence before the view. At first glance, sky gazing appears simple. You sit, you look, you breathe. But in Bon, this is a gateway practice, one of the oldest, most subtle, and most powerful. Known as Jiné, calm abiding, it is the preparation for Dzogchen, the great perfection. Sky gazing is not visualization. It is not mantra. It is pure presence without interference. You let go of grasping, effort, and inner commentary. You do not stare at the sky. You dissolve into it. You allow the mind's scaffolding to fall away. Why the sky? Because the sky is the perfect mirror of Rigpa, pristine, spacious awareness. Clouds may pass, winds may stir, but the sky itself remains unborn, unstained, and immeasurable. When you rest your gaze in the open sky, your inner vision begins to mimic its nature. In Bon, sky gazing is not a mental technique. It is a direct resonance with the ultimate. Over time, thoughts cease to stick. Identity begins to soften. The false self loses its grip, and the primordial self, clear, luminous, and ungraspable, emerges. This practice does not replace ritual. It purifies the practitioner so that ritual becomes embodiment rather than performance. The mountain holds stillness, the fire holds change, the sky holds what cannot be held. Sky gazing is the training for that. Furba rituals, the three-edged dagger, field anchoring and energetic protection. The furba is one of Bon's most iconic and misunderstood tools. Often mistaken for a weapon, the furba is actually a ritual anchor, a blade that pierces chaos, binds disordered energy, and secures sacred space. Its triple edges represent the cutting of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, the roots of distortion. A furba is always consecrated. Often made of wood, iron, or bone, it is carved with invocations of protective deities, most commonly Sipe Gyalmo, or wrathful guardians. The blade is never used casually. To wield it is to assume ritual responsibility. In Bon ceremonies, the furba may be planted into the earth to seal a perimeter. It may be placed beside the patient to anchor their soul. It may be symbolically thrust into the center of an effigy representing illness, intrusion, or karmic entanglement. But the furba is not just about banishing. It is about establishing sacred order. The world, when out of alignment, becomes fragmented. The Furba reminds the energies of their place. Some Bonpa say that without ethical clarity, the Furba will not respond. The ritualist must be anchored before the blade can anchor others. Power misused invites backlash. Used properly, the Furba is not a sword. It is a needle stitching torn fields back into wholeness. C. Advanced practices. While foundational and intermediate practices restore and stabilize, Bon's advanced teachings point to awakening itself, not as an escape from the world, but as full immersion in its luminous nature. These are initiatory transmissions, traditionally reserved for those who have cultivated clarity, humility, and devotion. Trekcho and Tagal, the great perfection of Bon, Dzogchen practices. At the summit of Bon's contemplative path lies Dzogchen, the great completion. It is not a goal. It is a recognition. Through Trekcho, cutting through, the practitioner releases all conceptual overlays. Ego, identity, even spiritual ambition are seen as fleeting weather in the vast sky of Rigpa. There is nothing to attain. There is only the letting go of what was never truly held. Togal, leaping over, is the direct, visionary counterpart. In a dark retreat or through sky gazing, the practitioner may begin to perceive thyle, luminous spheres, rainbow threads, and visions of deities. These are not hallucinations. They are the self-disclosures of awakened mind, patterns within the field of pure presence. Advanced Bon teachings speak of the rainbow body, the dissolution of the physical form into light at death, achieved by those who fully realize Rigpa. There are stories of Bon masters leaving no corpse, only garments and hair, their consciousness absorbed into luminous immensity. This is not symbolic. It is a real transfiguration born of practice, vision, and ethical refinement. Death and Bardo navigation, preparing for the great transition. In Bon, death is not the end. It is a movement through thresholds, a journey of awareness across dimensions. Preparation begins in life. Every ritual, every offering, every moment of clear presence is a training for the Bardo, the intermediate state between death and rebirth. One core practice is Fawa, the conscious ejection of consciousness at the moment of death. A trained practitioner channels awareness through the crown of the head or heart, directing it toward Kuntu Zangpo, the all-good one. If successful, the spirit bypasses confusion and is drawn into the luminous realm. Other Bon death practices involve guidance texts, read at the bedside, mantra recitation, and ritual offerings to shield the soul and open the way. The goal is not simply favorable rebirth, but awakening in the Bardo itself, where visions arise and karmic forces swirl. In the Bardo, if one recognizes the light as one's own nature, liberation is immediate. Bon teachings are clear. You cannot cheat the Bardo with technique alone. Only those who have aligned with truth, who have harmonized with the sacred architecture of life, will find clarity when the world dissolves. Closing reflection. Bon's inner technologies are not inventions. They are transmissions, gifts from luminous beings to a humanity in danger of forgetting. From the tea poured to the mountain, to the Furba planted in a broken field, to the last breath offered in Foa, all Bon practices point to the same truth. This world is not dead. You are not separate. The path is not beyond you. It is beneath your feet, in your bones, in your dreams. And when the winds are clear, the soul returns. And when the sky is still, the light appears. And when the ritual is true, the spirits answer. 5. Sacred image, the swastika and the 5-element mandala. In Bon, image is not decoration. It is orientation. The altar is not an object of worship. It is a cosmic mirror, a precise reflection of how energy, direction, and presence move through the world and the self. At the heart of this sacred geometry lies one of the oldest and most misunderstood symbols in human history: the swastika. In Bonn, the swastika is called Jiji, meaning eternal or immutable. It predates the rise of Buddhism and long outdates its 20th century appropriation into horror. Its arms turn clockwise, a direction that mirrors the rotation of the heavens. It does not dominate. It aligns. It does not conquer. It completes. The Bonn swastika is often shown in bright gold or white, turning to the right, representing the eternal flow of wisdom and energy in harmony with the universe. Where some systems see time as linear and fractured, the swastika spins through cyclical time, elemental balance, and unbreakable rhythm. It is a visual incantation of sacred continuity. The swastika is often placed within a 5-colored mandala, not arbitrarily, but as a map of the elemental cosmos: white, north; water, clarity, adaptability, purity; red, west; fire, transformation, insight, vitality; yellow, center, earth, grounding, memory, stability; green, east, wind, communication, breath, motion; blue, south, space, openness, potential, the unseen. Each direction holds a color, an element, a deity, a season, and a breath. To orient a Bonn altar is to restore the directions to their rightful places, so that what is above can enter below, and what is within can be mirrored without. The layout is not random. It is a recalibration of the world. At the center, a white crystal, clear and uncut. Around it, 5 colors, 5 directions, 5 winds. On the cloth, the symbol that predates empire. Not a cross of conquest, but a turning of the eternal way. Every Bonn ritual begins here, in this quiet map, this still vortex, where form holds function and symbol holds power. When the altar is correct, the space becomes permeable. The spirits recognize the signal. The elements return to rhythm. The healing begins. The Bonn swastika does not ask to be believed in. It asks to be entered. To stand before it is not to look at an object, but to face the turning heart of sacred order. 6. Philosophical ground: Bonn ontology and epistemology. At the core of Bonn is a different way of knowing, a different way of being, and a different answer to the question: what is real? To the Bonpa, reality is not an illusion to be escaped, but a living tapestry to be entered. The world is not Maya, a false dream masking truth, but a multidimensional spectrum, layered and alive, requiring participation, not renunciation. What is seen is not a trap, but an invitation. What is unseen is not superior, merely subtler. Bonn ontology, its understanding of being, is rooted in relation, not substance. A mountain is not real because it resists the hand. It is real because it responds to the voice. A ritual is not valid because it aligns with text. It is valid when it aligns with rhythm, when it restores order and the world answers. Where Western philosophy begins with objects, Bonn begins with presence. Where Buddhist metaphysics dissolves the world into emptiness, shunyata, Bonn sees emptiness not as negation, but as space infused with luminous awareness. The world arises not to be abandoned, but to be honored. Not transcended, but harmonized. The human being in Bonn is not a soul trapped in a body. We are an interface between visible and invisible, a ritual field made of breath, wind, memory, and spirit. Our purpose is not to escape the world, but to remain in right relation to it, to walk in rhythm with land, with ancestors, with wind, with death, with dream. Knowing as participation. Bon epistemology, its understanding of how we know, is equally radical. Knowledge is not constructed from rational deduction. It does not arise through intellectual analysis. It is not accumulated like coins or compiled like data. In Bon, you know something when it listens back. This is not poetry. It is practice. A mountain is not known when it is named and measured. It is known when it responds to your offering. A dream is not understood when it is interpreted psychologically. It is understood when its message ripples into waking life and aligns events. A deity is not grasped when defined, but when invoked, embodied, and communed with in ritual presence. This is gnosis through relation. The practitioner learns not through instruction alone, but through direct experience, touching, tasting, breathing the ritual. Embodied participation, reciting, moving, offering, listening. Dream truth. Revelation through symbols and spirit-encoded images. Truth is not outside you, nor merely inside you. It is between you and the field. Bon teaches that truth is relationally co-arising. It depends on the context, the presence, and the spiritual readiness of the one who asks. A prayer is answered not because you spoke, but because you remembered how to speak correctly. The sacredness of form. In the Buddhist view, particularly in its Madhyamaka and Dzogchen branches, form is ultimately empty. The table, the mountain, the self, even the Buddha image are said to be shunya, lacking intrinsic reality. The highest wisdom is to see through form into emptiness. Bon does not deny emptiness, but it does not reject form. Where Buddhism emphasizes detachment, Bon emphasizes engagement. Form is not falsehood. It is sacred expression. To abandon form too soon is to violate its sanctity. The drum, the dagger, the fire, the mantra, their power is not symbolic but ontological. The sound carries force. The shape holds memory. The offering smoke becomes breath to the spirits. The act of pouring tea to a mountain god is not representative. It is real in the deepest sense. It alters the field of causality and presence. Form in Bon is not an illusion. It is a vehicle of resonance. This is why Bon is richly ritualistic. Not because it clings to tradition, but because it understands form as the bridge between dimensions. To pour, to chant, to trace the swastika is not to distract the mind. It is to activate sacred correspondence, to step into the web and tug the thread that reaches stars. Language, symbol, and field. Bon sees language itself as living architecture. Words are not arbitrary signifiers. They are sound forms charged with intention, often linked to deity, element, or directional force. This is why mantras are guarded, and why ritual speech is formalized. Certain syllables, spoken in correct rhythm and tone, open gates. Others seal them. The same applies to symbolic diagrams, mudras, and even the spatial layout of ritual implements. Knowledge in Bon is not known until embodied in practice. To intellectually comprehend the function of a ritual means little. It is when one performs it in correct alignment with time, direction, and spiritual readiness that its knowledge descends, not as idea, but as transformation. This is why Bon teachings emphasize field. Every being carries a field, a pattern of energy, presence, memory, and relational imprint. And every act, speech, thought, ritual interacts with that field. Some heal, some disrupt. Wisdom is knowing the difference. Dream as oracle, practice as mirror. Bon places immense value on the dream realm, not as fantasy, but as a diagnostic layer of reality. What appears in dream is often more real than what appears in waking perception because it is less filtered by conditioning. The dream is where teachings arrive from protector spirits, where ancestors give warning, where the soul rehearses its death. This is not superstition. It is epistemology. Dream is another mode of knowing, a legitimate channel of information. Likewise, ritual is not make-believe. It is not psychological suggestion. It is the embodied enactment of truth. In Bon, the world is not divided between material and spiritual. It is layered, breathing, recursive. Ritual is how one moves across those layers, by entering the mirror rather than polishing it. The relational worldview. Ultimately, Bon philosophy rests on a simple but profound idea. The world is not made of things. It is made of relationships. What exists is not a static universe of inert objects, but a dynamic field of living forces, constantly interacting, responding, transforming. A person is not a sealed ego. They are a network of karmic winds, ancestral ties, elemental imprints, and spirit permissions. A forest is not timber. It is a presence, a consciousness, a collective field of Yule Law and Lu and Yin beings, each with needs, moods, and wisdom. To be wise is not to escape this field. It is to harmonize with it, to walk gently, speak truthfully, dream openly, and act ritually. This is not a rejection of reason. It is a refinement of reason, one that includes mystery, silence, and encounter as valid forms of truth. In Bon, you know something when it listens back. This may be the deepest statement of Bon's epistemology. Truth is relationally confirmed. Meaning is field-dependent. And knowledge is reciprocal. You do not know a mountain until the mountain responds. You do not understand a prayer until the wind changes. You do not learn a ritual until the space around you shifts. In Bon, the world is alive, and aliveness requires listening. 7. Key danger: erasure, absorption, and misrepresentation. Not all threats come from violence. Some arrive cloaked in reverence. Some wear the robes of scholarship. Some disguise themselves as preservation. The Bon tradition has endured not because it was protected, but because it refused to forget itself, even as the world around it tried to rewrite, reduce, or absorb it into something else. For centuries, Tibetan Buddhism absorbed Bon, reassigning its deities, reinterpreting its rituals, and rebranding its cosmology through Buddhist frameworks. In some cases, Bon was dismissed as black magic or folk belief, a primitive shadow preceding the true light of Dharma. In others, its elements were co-opted and canonized with Buddhist gloss until the origins blurred. Bon's complex ritual architecture, its elemental cosmology, its dream practices, and protector deities, many of these were reattributed as Mahayana or Vajrayana innovations. Even Tonpa Shenrab, the luminous founder of Bon, was recast in some texts as a previous incarnation of the Buddha himself, subtly repositioning Bon as a tributary rather than a source. This was not merely political, it was metaphysical colonialism. The result was not dialogue, but subsumption. Then came the modern crisis: exile. After the Chinese invasion of Tibet, Bon, like other Tibetan lineages, fled into diaspora. In exile, Bon faced new threats: invisibility, cultural extinction, and the crushing weight of Buddhist hegemony in the global spiritual market. To survive, some Bon leaders translated their teachings into frameworks more palatable to Western seekers. Rituals were simplified, contexts were diluted. The profound became picturesque. In trying to be recognized, Bon risked becoming something it never was: a spiritual product, a sanitized curiosity for eclectic consumers, a Tibetan shamanism boxed for export. And then came the scholars. Academic interest in Bon brought visibility, yes, but also disembodiment. What was once a living field of spirits, songs, ancestors, and relational ritual became charts, terms, taxonomies. The sacred map was pinned to a table. Its pulse stopped. To be studied is not the same as being seen. To be documented is not the same as being known. Bon is not endangered because it is old. It is endangered because it is being framed, not felt. The greatest danger facing Bon is not persecution or obscurity. It is misunderstanding, forgetting that Bon is not a relic. It is not pre-Buddhist, not a cultural fossil, not a local color on Tibet's spiritual tapestry. Bon is a living cosmology, a breathing path, a way of alignment that still speaks, still works, still heals, when practiced. To reduce it to anthropology is to kill it gently. To package it for tourists is to sell it without soul. To respect it is not to explain it, but to enter it, to practice it, and to remember that the mountain gods still listen. Bon is not ancient because it is gone. It is ancient because it remembers. Would you like to proceed with the final section? 8. Closing ritual reflection. Sky does not forget. Or would you prefer a brief coda, glossary, or visual layout of the cosmological map? 8. Closing ritual reflection. Sky does not forget. You do not need to be Bon to understand this. You do not need lineage transmission, a monastery, or a mountain pass. You only need to remember what your bones already know, that the world is alive and waiting for you to return your gaze. The sky remembers. Not metaphorically, literally. The sky holds memory. It bears witness. It carries the breath of prayers spoken long before you and long after you. And if you listen, not with the mind, but with the field of your body, it will answer. In Bon, the simplest practice is the oldest. Sky gazing. Nothing to visualize, nothing to chant, no goal, no judgment, no grasp. Just this. Sit somewhere quiet. It can be a rooftop, a hillside, a back garden. If possible, choose dawn or dusk, times when the veil is thinner. Face the open sky. Let your eyes soften. Let your breath lengthen. Do not fix your gaze. Do not search. Let the sky look into you. If thoughts arise, let them pass like birds. If emotion stirs, let it move like wind. Stay. Breathe. Let the field settle. Let awareness become wide and clear. After a while, you may begin to feel it. Not insight, not vision, but a subtle listening. Not from you to the sky, but from the sky into you. This is not a technique. It is a realignment. A remembering. You are not looking at the sky. You are rejoining it. You do not need to speak Bon words to make this real. But you do need to remember how to relate to sky, to rock, to breath, to spirit, to leave offerings, to listen for dreams, to walk the land as if it watches, because it does. Bon is not what you believe. It is how you align. If you pour tea to the mountain and feel it receive, if you speak aloud to your ancestors and the wind stills, if you walk into the forest and feel something shift, if you sit beneath the sky and it no longer feels empty, then the tradition is not lost. The Bonpa are still with you. The mountain still breathes. The flame is not gone.